I remember the days that you'd pick up these wounded kids, you'd hoist them into your helicopter, and once they were off that ground and in that helicopter, to see their faces, that the relief, I don't know how to describe it. It was like something just jumped off them. They just, the weight lifted. And I'd watch them as we'd come out of there, as we would pick up speed. I would watch them feel the air, the coolness of the air. They were down in sweltering, terrible area down there. The heat was oppressive. And then that coolness would reach their face, and I'd watch them close their eyes and feel that, their whole demeanor changed. I saw the fear in their eyes. I saw they're scared, they're wounded, they're, blood everywhere. Their uniforms some of them are tattered. And I just look at their faces, and it's just a relief to get in that helicopter and get them back to some place that's clean, safe, to get cared for. So I think back on that, and I think, wow, that's pretty awesome that we took care of them like that. The interaction was almost every day with pilots, with the crew members. We wore red hats, which defined us. If you say today, if you walk around any of the Army vets that I run into, and I say I was in dust off, it clicks automatically. They know exactly who and what you were. Most of them say, thank you very much, that you guys got me out of here, you lifted me off out of this, or, I was wounded in this, in this battle, and it was a dust-off chopper that, took me out of there, that saved my life, or whatever it was. Or even if it was just I was slightly wounded and you were just taking me in for routine stuff. When I stepped off that C-130, when I landed at night in Quignon, and I was waiting on the side of the tarmac to be picked up by a helicopter from the unit that I was assigned to, yeah, it was a wake up. At that time, I felt truthfully very alone. The sights, the smells, the I don't know, the largeness of it, I guess, it was pretty defining for me. You look for direction, but so many people were going in different directions. You had a couple guys who I kind of stuck to like glue because they were going to the same place I was going. They were assigned there too. So it was, I think even for them at the time was, wow, this is incredible. Standing on the tarmac, helicopters, planes taking off, the sounds and the sights of war, the military, everything, trucks, jeeps, just in the amount is what really got me it just was all around you at that time. I was a crew chief. I went for helicopter repair and, through the schools at Fort Rucker, Alabama. And when I got out of there, I was assigned, to a helicopter. So I never knew that I would end up in a medical unit. We took some rounds just flying, I think of all the things, landing in a hot LZ, which they were engaged right at that moment, was always the fact that you took rounds. But that was just flying from one place to another, and they would shoot at us as we flew by. It came up through the bottom, went up through the pedals, went through the pilot's foot, and then up through the top of the chin bubble. He was a great pilot. He said, yeah, I think I've been hit. And at that time, he said, no, everything's cool. Just, let's get to where we're going. And at that time, we headed for an aid station where we were flying to, and landed, and they took care of him. But he came back. He got, taken care of there, was out for a while, and then came back. When you landed in some of these LZs, the sound of gunfire, the battle was raging, not very far from you. And you could take rounds. Later, after anything, when we would go back to wherever we were at, when we sat down, I always did an inspection of the craft after we landed. to see if there was any damage from anything. You could take a round through certain parts of the helicopter without hitting anything vital, or that happened, not quite, every day, but it happened every once in a while. We had quite a few, well, not quite a few. I would say several aircraft when I was there that, they crashed, that they were shot down. It was a hoist mission, started taking fire, and they just went into trees. And, unfortunately, some people didn't make it out, and then, others, laid in the jungle for a while until usually the unit they were supporting could get to them and help them out. I would guess the contact was a lot closer than they thought. It turned into a bad day. I was never shot down. I was very lucky that the only really catastrophic thing I ever had, I had a tail rotor failure. And that was it was a controlled crash. Matter of fact, I think on that one of those pictures it shows a Chinook lifting off. I think that was the helicopter that we were at a hover, and the tail rotor failure, and the pilot it took a hard landing on it. He impacted real hard, and it caused damage to the aircraft, and they couldn't repair that one, so they had to take it to a facility to have it repaired. The Koreans, top notch. I mean, Tiger Division was, these guys, when they jumped in, heaven forbid, pretty much patrolled the valley that our base camp was in. And we very rarely, I'm trying to remember when we took any incoming in that area or anything. The Tigers, top notch unit. I would think that if you were in it, up to your eyeballs, and you look behind you and there were Koreans, I think, I got a shot at this. We might come out of this okay, because these guys really, really were good fighters. The Army, of course, put our base and everything on alert. That there were some heavy engagements, throughout South Vietnam, and it was striking certain military areas that previously you thought were untouchable. We were put on alert. The crews for that day, I think they, if I remember right, they may have expanded it. We were flying much more on that day because so many engagements. I just got a helicopter. I just got assigned to one after being, at first when you arrive there, you don't immediately get to be a flight crew. You have to work kind of up to it. And I had just gotten into it. So that day we had made several, dust offs all through the area. I don't think Quy Nhon was hit quite as bad as some of the other military. I remember distinctly that we were in, some pretty bad engagements at that time. It was more of high alert status and more flights, more calls, so some of our base camps, I think they were heavily mortared. So that happened. For us, more crews out, more helicopters, put on flight status. The crews that I worked with, the pilots were just beyond belief. And to watch them move that giant aircraft in among trees, and to be, several feet away from a tree that if you strike it, that's it for you. Nose on to a side of a mountain and drop a hoist, 20, 30, 40 feet into, and you're up above with lights on and a big noisy helicopter, and that a firefight is raging not far from you, and seeing tracers come up through the trees. Or mostly my job at that moment, because the medic is tied up dropping the hoist through the trees, is to keep the aircraft from the blades and the rear boom of the aircraft, the rear tail rotor, from striking trees that are right next to you. And, sometimes, a gust of wind would move you a foot or so to the left, and the next thing you know, you're chopping trees. I'm running from one side of the aircraft to the other, telling them to, they're looking straight ahead. They don't see anything behind you. Both pilots their attention is either where they can just turn their head sideways but mostly they're looking straight ahead. So it's up to me to keep them, out of the trees. If you start taking fire, that adds to it, but we didn't carry machine guns. We didn't carry M60s like most of the other helicopters did. Returned fire several occasions, but you have to remember that when you're above the trees, you can't see what's down below. There's other soldiers down there too. So I used to wonder to myself with these guys with these M60s, just what do you shoot at? Unless they're out in the open, out in some rice paddy or something like that, I would never ever think about shooting down into the trees, not knowing where our fellow soldiers are. Usually the forward bases the zones that you would land in, we supported the 173rd Airborne, 101st Airborne, a lot of the airborne units in that area, all through the Central Highlands, which were pretty mountainous regions, all the way north. So they were real good about providing security. They knew that their friends were injured and they wanted them out of there. So most of the time, they'd set up a ring around. They'd blow a landing zone, or they'd cut trees, and you'd put that helicopter right down among them. A lot of times you couldn't land, but you were feet off the ground, and you'd pull them in as you were standing there. They'd usually have one soldier on the ground telling you, thumbs up that you got them all. You're out of here. A lot of times we had to leave. There were so many that we had to leave wounded, slightly wounded, even though they couldn't fight, to take critically wounded. And the medics on the ground were phenomenal. They usually had them when they shoved them in. Our medic, he took care of them, but a lot of the work was done. Those were 2 Viet Cong that we airlifted out of a firefight to take back for medical treatment. Picked up NVA. They were wounded. They put them on board, and sometimes they would ask for somebody to fly with us, just to keep an eye on them to go back. So, but usually not. Usually they were shot up pretty bad. They weren't going to do much. The medic took pretty much hands-on with them. Usually I was just sitting over watching him unless he needed my help. He would ask me, come over here and help me do this or hold this or hold the IV while I change it or whatever he was doing at the time. But like I said, most of these people, those people were shot up. I mean, they weren't, they were lucky they weren't going to die. We were trying to get them back as fast as we could. I picked up some really horribly wounded men. I mean, horribly wounded. And it always struck me as to, God, he's my age. I mean, he's so young, and they were horribly wounded. So, getting them to an aid station or to the evac station was foremost. If that helicopter, if we could have put a bigger jet engine on it, we would have got them there faster, as fast as we could fly, and sometimes pushing it to the limit, because the medic would say, this guy he's not doing well. That was our foremost, thought in our mind was, getting them there as fast as we could. We never pick and choose who we picked up. So if it was Vietnamese or Korean or, American, and, we served all. Of course, Americans were Americans. I mean, my camaraderie with them was much more than anybody else. Of course, I would gladly go out on a limb for the Koreans. The Vietnamese, we got them there as fast as we could. The guys on the ground, I mean, our job was dangerous and everything, but they were that's a hellhole. I mean, when I looked at them coming up out of there, it was terrible. The least we could do was to do what we do best and do it, maximum for them. Bill Holland, William Holland, I think it was his real name, there only several months before, his helicopter crashed into the side of the mountains. He lost his life. Young kid from Texas. I always remember him because he had a silver tooth in the front. Tough kid, tough kid.